So there's a connection between what you're dreaming up and what you want and the beauty of it, and then the desire that you have to bring that through to fruition. Aloha everybody, and welcome to the Wild Wahine. This is going to be your astro forecast for this upcoming week, Monday through Sunday. That would be the 22nd to the 28th, and we're going to be talking about three major transits and or aspects. Our first aspect is going to be Mars trine Pluto. That's perfecting on the 24th, and we're going to be talking about Venus moving into the sign of Pisces. Yay! And it's exaltation. That's going to feel so good. And that's going to be on the 25th. And then we have the Sun sextile Uranus, which is also going to be happening on the 25th. So we have some really interesting shifts in energy towards the end of the week. We also have a full moon that's going to be in Virgo. That's going to be on the 27th. And that particular full moon, we're going to talk about in a separate video. So make sure you watch for later on in the week when I release that particular video. That's going to be all about kind of full moon stuff. So let's jump into what's happening in our first aspect that's happening, which is Mars trining Pluto. We're going to be feeling that now. We're going to be feeling that until about March 1st. Like I said before, it's going to be perfecting on the 24th. So Mars trining Pluto. So what does that mean? Mars is our energy of the warrior. Mars is our energy of the athlete, the one that has a lot of energy. Pluto is all about transformation, about a death and rebirth, not necessarily in the physical sense, but more so in the metaphorical sense. It can happen actually with people as well. But remember, it is a trine, and that's a positive aspect. So it's these two typically like malefic planets coming together in this positive aspect. So it's like, ooh, we're using these energies that sometimes can feel very oppressive to actually gain and get what we want. So it's the energy that we need to transform the things in the life, in our lives that we want to transform, which can be incredibly powerful because sometimes it's kind of like being in charge of your transformation as opposed to like letting a situation happen that is transformative for you. Because sometimes we are not always in the driver's seat of our lives. We're kind of sort of just doing what we're doing, wishing change could happen. And then, like not really doing anything about changing it. And then life is like, and then you're like, and then you have to like activate and you have to change. So this is more kind of like taking the bull by the horns, and you're actually like saying, okay, I'm activating and I'm going to be the person that's kind of creating this change. I can create this change for myself. I have the energy for it. So if you've been dealing with things such as, codependency, this is great if you've been dealing with addictions of sorts. And if you want to have like transform some of your bad habits or anything that needs effort to do. And for some people that could just be like cleaning their place, like we're all different. We all have different things that are challenging. Putting boundaries for your children. I mean, there's so many things that can be challenging for us. This is the time that you're going to have extra supportive energy to get that done. So it's mobilizing your energy. Think of it as like a warrior, essentially like going off to war and kind of going through, it's going to take effort to kind of have it happen, but then the transformation is there. And typically like the transformation tends to be more long lasting. So that's the good thing about it. If it's been something that you've been chucking away at, you're going to see like some positivity in that. It's a great time for healthy competition. Really, really good. And that's so different than kind of like cheating and kind of being super jealous because somebody else has something and you don't. It's really about like, hey, let's like come together and let's like compete and strive to be our best. And that reminds me a lot of athletes. A lot of like team sports do that. You see people like, looking at the person who they would call the GOAT, and they're like, okay, what's his score? I want to have as many shots as he has, or I want to win as many games as he does. All of that healthy, positive competition that really like pushes you over the line and gets you to that really sweet space. It has a lot to do also too with becoming skilled, becoming really good at something, like the work that you do to become good, and that thing that you do that you're working so hard for, it transforms your life. So if you've been working really hard at a skill set or a new job or just something new that you want, you're going to really feel that you're going to have that supportive energy to get you over the hump, especially if you feel like you've been hitting a brick wall. You're like, I'm almost there, but I have something right in front of me. I can't get over to the other side. You can use this energy to kind of sort of catapult you to the next level. A really interesting time too, I think, for like psychological, like we talk about psychological warfare, whether that be like psychological warfare that's happening to you, because of course there's always positive and negatives to everything, or psychological warfare that you're doing for, to someone else. It could be great, like if you're investigating something. Pluto has to do with all things that are like secretive and things that like are hidden sometimes, when it's outside of its transformative aspect. So if like investigative journalists or somebody like that have been looking up things and looking to uncover things, this would be a really good time where something you've been working really hard. Hey, Cynthia, thanks for joining. Something that you've been working really hard for is going to get uncovered, is going to be kind of unleashed, and people will see that. So you really want to make sure whenever Pluto is in the place, there has a lot to do with power, has a lot to do with secrets, like I said, government things, all of those things, transforming, using the hard work and the energy that you've been doing to move things and shift things. So we might kind of sort of see that when this perfects, and even going into the first. A lot of people associate this type of energy too with like a Kundalini awakening, and everybody uses that word Kundalini, and not to go like too much into it in this particular video, but essentially it is like a power place. It's a place of power that like awakens you to your spiritual self. And so essentially Kundalini is associated with the goddess Shakti. This is of the Hindu tradition, and it's essentially like an unfurling of a snake that's located at your lower chakra. And as it uncoils and goes all the way up, it connects with the head, which is where Shiva and Shiva Shakti have a relationship together. And it's essentially the feminine, the divine feminine, the divine masculine coming together and unlocking you and waking you up to who you are. As if we have all, like in the Matrix, we have all been asleep, and we forgot who we were, and we don't know why we're here, and we don't know our life purpose. So it's kind of waking ourselves up to that. So this could be like a really, really supportive time to that. So with Kundalini energy, there's so many traditions that have that. It could be called chi in Hawaii. So sometimes we call it mana. Like every group of people has a tradition of, you have personal power that's placed somewhere on your body, or it's maybe associated with the deity, but a lot of times it does reside in you. And a lot of times your life journey is about opening that up and unlocking that. And it's really a journey that you have to go on. And a lot of times we have all these things that are in the way of us getting there. And so it's about like kind of negotiating around those things, whether we knock them out, whether we jump over them, whether we burrow under them and get to the other side. So this is going to be a good time for you to do that with this particular aspect. Some of the challenges that come with that. There is a destructive quality to Pluto. Whenever you have Pluto in this space, sometimes it could be overdone. It could be overly competitive. Power struggles is a huge thing that happens during this time. Sometimes whenever you're dealing with Mars, Mars represents like surgeons and things like that. So sharp objects, injury with sharp objects, those kinds of things can happen. There can also just be like destructive physicality, in general. So you just also want to be careful. But like I said, it is a trine, so it is a more positive or benefic aspect. And I think like if I had to say like a movie that was associated with this, because this is a new thing that I'm doing, talking about movies that are associating with these aspects, I'd like to think of like Rocky or like Southpaw, like all of those kind of like warrior type movies, because athletes are essentially just warriors. And a lot of warriors, when they weren't on the battlefield, they were athletes, or they would practice war in an athletic way. Like all traditions have done that. So somebody that really goes through something tough, and they transform and get to the other side. And once they get to the other side, they become a new person, but they still had to kind of sort of go through that dark night of the soul to get there. So if you've been trucking on something, or you've been like just working really hard, know that this is supportive for you, and it's going to help get you to that next place. And so now Venus is moving into the sign of Pisces, where it is exalted. So essentially Venus is lifted on high. It's like the most auspicious and beautiful place. It's a place where Venus can do her really good work, like why she's here, essentially. Venus, our benefic planet, that has to do with beauty, that has to do with love, that has to do with romantic relationships, and essentially all relationships, has to do with marriage, all of those things, and all other kinds of partnerships that we have in our life. Now, we've been kind of a little bit maybe under the gun with our relationships recently, because Venus was squaring Mars last week, and we talked about that in last week's video, still kind of coming off of that. So if your relationships or love, or the way that things look, or your art or your creativity, because that's another thing that's Venusian, if those have been a little off or a little bumpy, or if it's been kind of questionable and hasn't felt really good, we'll see that as it shifts, because Venus goes into Pisces on the 25th and it's there until March 20th. So we'll essentially be there for almost like a month. We're going to see a real big shift with that. So, and it's going to feel really good because Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, who's our other benefic planet. So it's like benefic, and benefic means like, yes. So it's going to feel, we're just going to feel that shift. And I'm really excited about that. So Pisces, which we talked about last week, really has that energy of like romance and dreamy aspect. It has a lot to do with unconditional love and the place, like the birthplace of where we kind of grow our souls and we dream and we manifest, but not by like doing, but it's like kind of in that like primordial dream space. That's kind of where the Pisces energy comes. So why Venus loves being there and is exalted in that space is because it's the space where all the beautiful possibilities are possibilities. And then you kind of take it from that space, the dreamscape, and you bring it to reality. So Venus loves that because it's like, I love to dream. I love to just think about all the beautiful things and touch the beautiful things and smell them or dream about them and think about them. It's the place where like a chef would say, oh, what if, you know, this flavor matched with this flavor, how would that be? And then they actually go make that pie or cake or whatever. It's that type of thing. So there's a connection between what you're dreaming up and what you want and the beauty of it, and then the desire that you have to bring that through to fruition. It's the aspect of meeting somebody that you think is like really hot or really smart or whatever it is that turns you on, and then you go home and you think about them and you think about them and you're wondering about them, and you create up all these scenarios, and maybe you dream about them and maybe you have a hot dream about them, and whatever the thing is, like all of that, like the wanting and the desiring and the heart palpitations, and then you see them and you're like, look away, and all of that is all of that kind of space of like romantic, playful love. So that's just beautiful. So there's also like a lot of like unconditional love, you know, that comes with that, a non-judgmental love, which I like to associate with kind of like animal love, or like the way that your animals that you love like look at you, or like the way that a dog just kind of sort of like looks into your eyes and you're just like, oh my gosh, or the way that a baby or a toddler, you know, your baby or someone else's baby, you know, if you're babysitting or whatever, and you just like, your heart is melting because the baby's just so like beautiful and looking at you and you feel so like connected to the baby. That kind of level of love, like that's what we're talking about. So really good time. It's like the hopeless romantic time, you know, really good time to share love with other people. I think with Venus and Pisces, we're going to see people stepping up and really like just doing things out of the kindness and the love in their heart and helping people out, which I think is just definitely needed. I mean, when Venus went retrograde, all hell broke loose and there was just like all kinds of like civil unrest. So Venus and Pisces is like, yeah, let's come together and let's help out. So I'm hoping a lot of that energy is going to be also surrounding what's happening in Texas, because it's, you know, very difficult and really essentially like all over the world, because this isn't just focused on, you know, what's in the United States. Being in the dream state, really thinking about like being very nostalgic, thinking about like your family or how things used to be, or like growing up and, you know, the traditions that you had and bringing those forward. If you're in love with somebody, or if you like somebody and you're waiting to kind of ask them out and you've been nervous, really good time to do that during this time, because remember, Venus is then going to be in Aries and it's going to be like, you know, and it's fall. So if you, it's not to say that you have a window of time, but you do have this window where things are like extra specially lined up for you. So it's a really good time to do that. If you were waiting, just don't get it done, get her done, you know, in like the next 3 weeks. So just a little bit of an explanation of Venus. When Venus was in Capricorn a couple months ago, we saw Venus expressing themselves as a very tangible thing. So that would be Venus saying like, I'm providing tangible things, and there's like, you know, paying bills, and we need to have a house, and like all of the things that make sense. And I'm saving for college. Like, you know, these are the things that parents do for their children. They save for their college, or I'm getting a life insurance policy. All of those kind of very tangible ways that you love someone, where you're looking out for them and you're looking out for their well-being, like into the future, right? That's kind of Venus Capricorn. Then after that, we had Venus moving into the sign of Aquarius, right? Which is currently is in. And then it's going to be transitioning on Thursday. So Venus Aquarius had more of a quality of like what are the things that are ethical? How can I love the collective? How do I love everyone? How do I love my society? How do I love the world? How do I love what can I do for the environment? How can I love you and also love myself and give us enough space to do that? How can we not be codependent? How can I support you doing your thing and you support me doing my thing? It was love, but it was love from a little bit of a distance. Venus Pisces is what I call body love. So what I mean by body love is it's love up on top of you. It's really like loving, like in a deep way. It's kisses, it's cuddles, it's like weighted blanket love. It's like hot tea. It's like yummy miso soup or tom yum soup, or if you're chicken noodle soup if you eat meat, those kinds of things that like feel good, that make you feel secure. It's a back rub love. It's love making. It's all of the things that we think about when we romanticize about love. That's the expression. I say that it's like tandem bike love. It's like his and her t-shirt love. It's, the couple where people are like, get a room type love. And like, why is this the 10th post on Instagram of you and your boyfriend love, So that kind of like romantic, idealistic, but like not afraid to just kind of get in there and show it and let everybody know. And that's really beautiful. So some of the challenges with this, even though like, all of those things are really beautiful, some of the things that can be challenges is there's a tendency sometimes to attract negative people and to just have a lot of codependency, because Pisces sometimes has a little bit of an allergy to boundaries and isn't really that great with boundaries all the time, because it's like big open-hearted love. And so when oversteps their boundaries, lets everybody come into their boundaries with their friendships, with their relationships, with their jobs, with everything. So you still want to make sure that you're maintaining your boundaries, even though you're being open-hearted and you're helping and you're loving and you're doing all of that. Those things are always super beautiful. But if you are overextending yourself to the point of exhaustion, then it's not. And then it can, you can get into a very resentful state, and that's not a good thing, especially when you kind of voluntarily are loving people. Let's see. The other thing that's important too is that with Venus and Pisces, there is this quality that can happen at times where you are in a state of denial about the reality of what's going on and what it is that you exactly want in your life. And so that becomes interesting, because being in denial and kind of, it, like I say, like those little monkeys that are like, what is it? See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, right? So you're not thinking about, because Venus always is trying to balance things and make things so that they look good and that they are good and that they're fair and that they're loving. Sometimes it could be a situation where things really need to be called out, or you really need to step up to the plate and say, okay, this is what we need to do so that we can be more loving and more effective. And you just kind of are in a state of denial, in a state of fantasy, and not really dealing with the reality of what's happening. You're denying yourself, you're denying the situation, because you don't want to rock the boat, because you don't want to cause any friction. So that can happen too with Venus Pisces. It's like not really being honest about what the situation is, and if it's really what you want. You can kind of sort of talk yourself out of the reality of things and create a fantasy space where actually things are not really what they are. You're not really being honest with yourself and honest with the other person and honest with everybody about what's really going on. So denial's real. Great time for artists, great time for musicians, great time for anybody that's like creating poetry or any kind of like artistic thing. It's going to be some really beautiful times with some breakthroughs, especially as we talk about the sun sextiling Uranus. And you just have to remember to have those healthy boundaries. That's really, really the key with this. So with the sun sextile Uranus, we're going to be feeling that today, which is the 22nd to the 27th, and it's going to be perfecting on the 25th. Okay, so the sun is going to be in Pisces, or the sun is in Pisces right now. Uranus is in Taurus, and Taurus, remember, is Venus ruled. So this is beautiful because we have a Piscean sun, and we have the Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, and Venus is exalted in Pisces. So we have the Venus, moving into Pisces, and then you have this really interesting aspect with this sun square Pisces. And so it's just going to be like a really beautiful time for you for like things to happen that were unexpected, but they work out for you and they're kind of very supportive for you. And so I'm kind of interested in seeing how this plays out, especially since Venus is moving into Pisces on 25th, and then the sun is sextile Uranus on the 25th. So what are some of the things that can happen with that? Creative breakthroughs, just things that you didn't think went together suddenly kind of miraculously go together, and then it works. You know, you have an opportunity to really express your uniqueness or see the beauty in the unique thing that you bring. So really like bring your unique self. I mean, Uranus is really going to be in the background of everything this year, and it's really just calling for you to come out as you are. You know, whether people support you or not, whether you think it's accepted or not, like be you and be who you are. That's important. So opportunities might, you know, come to you, or more opportunities coming to you, or an opportunity like out of the blue that you didn't even know existed, you know, or an opportunity for you to step into the spotlight. When the sun is involved, it's always about kind of the spotlight being on you and you being seen for something. Maybe you've been doing something in the background and suddenly you're like, you know, being seen for it, or you're being recognized. Sudden support for something that you're doing, especially if you're an artist. Suddenly you have a benefactor. Suddenly somebody that you didn't think would like your thing likes it, and they're going to green light it, and then you'll be able to go move forward with that. So that's super exciting as well. Work that, like I said, work that leads to be seen, the unveiling of new things, the unveiling of doing things in a different way and seeing things in a different way. Tech is huge whenever Uranus is involved. So it could be the new iPhone, whatever, or iPad, whatever, or whatever new kind of technology that would be happening. We might kind of see that happen. You know, we might be continuing with what we're doing with more like kind of online stuff and just different ways to do things that are more kind of tech based and getting a little bit more deeply involved in that. So we might see that. Some of the challenges that can come with that, because whenever we're dealing with Uranus, we're always dealing with a situation which is never stable. So there can be a lot of instability. There can be a lot of like kind of like not being focused on what it is that you want to do. So it also could be a lot of like not sticking to the one thing that you're doing. So it could be a lot of creativity. Sun in Pisces is going to be massive amounts of creativity, massive amounts of ideas, massive amounts of time spent in that like space of dreaming and that subliminal space, and bringing those things to reality can be kind of difficult, you know, because you might have so much. So you want to kind of catch all of those ideas and kind of sort of put them down in something so that you can go back to them. Because sometimes people who have just so much creativity, but they actually don't stick to it, they see this other person over here who has like the one idea, but they're killing it with that one idea. And you're like, what are you doing? Like I have like 100 ideas and I haven't seen mine through to completion. And a lot of times it's because that you're not able to kind of sort of hyper focus in and do that one thing and then tick that off and then go to the next one. Rebelliousness, just because it's Uranus and there's always this like, I'm going to go against the thing. Whenever the sun is involved, there's always an opportunity for a person to be super egotistical with Sun Pisces. And, you know, there could be a quality or a possibility to that you're just super absorbed in your feelings and how you feel and what you want to do and how you want to do it. And you don't want to really listen to anybody else or see anybody, or you don't see the other side of things. So you're very self-focused and kind of absorbed in your own self and your own feelings and or your creative vision. You don't really want to take under consideration anyone else's. So those are kinds of sort of some things that you want to like think about, or you want to just kind of sort of be open to as, you know, you're navigating this energy. So thank you guys so much for joining me for this week's Astro Forecast. If you have any questions, you can always DM me. You can find me on YouTube at The Wild Wahine. You can find me on Facebook at The Wild Wahine, and on Twitter, also on Instagram. And if you want to book a tarot reading or an astrology reading, you can find me at www.thewildwahine.as.me. Let me know if you have any questions. Make sure you show up for for this week, actually, when I talk a little bit about the full moon in Virgo. And I will see you guys later this week. Aloha.